My father didn't even look at me when he slammed the suspension letter onto the glass desk. His voice was a hard, deliberate whisper, the kind meant to hurt more than shouting. "You're not stepping foot back into that school until you apologize to Colton." His beloved golden boy stood behind him with that smirk, the same one he wore the day he shoved me, lied about it, and watched everyone take his side. I felt my heartbeat thundering in my ears, my palms shaking, my breath stuttering between anger and disbelief. In that moment, everything inside me caved, like the floor had been ripped from under me. The betrayal burned sharp and deep, deeper than any cruelty I'd experienced in my 20 years of life. My own father, choosing a boy who wasn't even his blood over me, suspending my future just to protect him. I wanted to scream. I wanted to break. But I didn't. I just froze, staring at them, realizing neither saw me as anything more than an inconvenience. My name is Arden Hale, and I wasn't always this calm. I wasn't always this cold. Before this moment, I was the girl who worked hard, minded her business, and prayed life would stay stable enough for me to finish my marketing degree. But that was before the golden boy arrived, before he turned my life into a target range, before my father showed me what his love was actually worth. If you've ever had someone you trusted betray you for someone who didn't deserve it, drop a like and subscribe. This story gets darker before it gets better. The office felt smaller than it actually was. The walls pressed in while my father's words echoed like broken glass scraping against concrete. "You brought this on yourself, Arden," he said, sliding the suspension papers across his desk like they were nothing. Like my entire future wasn't written on them in bold red ink. Colton leaned against the bookshelf, arms crossed, wearing that same entitled expression he'd perfected since moving in. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His silence screamed louder than any insult could. I stared at the paper. 2 weeks suspension, pending formal apology. My scholarship requirements flashed through my mind, attendance, grades, conduct. This suspension could destroy everything I'd worked for. My throat tightened, but I refused to let them see me break. "Did you hear me?" Dad's voice cut through my thoughts. I looked up, meeting his cold stare. "I heard you." "Then you understand what you need to do." I understood perfectly. He wanted me to bow down, to lie, to let Colton win again. I picked up the paper with trembling fingers, folded it carefully, and stood. My legs felt like water, but I walked to the door without looking back. The last thing I heard was Colton's quiet laugh. That sound followed me all the way home. The walk home was 3 miles of pure numbness. My feet moved automatically while my brain spiraled through every horrible possibility. Lose the scholarship. Lose my internship. Lose everything I'd built while living in this house that never felt like home. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw Dad's name. The message was short and brutal. "Reflect. You brought this on yourself." I stared at those words until they blurred. I brought this on myself. By existing. By refusing to disappear when Colton wanted my space, my father's attention, my entire life. The air felt too thick to breathe. I stopped on the sidewalk, hands shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. An older woman walking her dog gave me a concerned look, but I turned away before she could ask if I was okay. I wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. But somewhere beneath the panic and the hurt, something else stirred, something colder, something that whispered, "They think you're broken, prove them wrong." I wiped my eyes, straightened my shoulders, and kept walking. By the time I reached the house, the tears had dried. The hurt remained, but it was changing shape, hardening into something sharper. Something useful. My name is Arden Hale, 20 years old, marketing major, 3rd year at State University. Before everything collapsed, my life was simple. I worked hard, kept my head down, and tried to make my father proud. That last part was always the hardest. Dad was a corporate manager, always busy, always stressed, always looking for something I could never quite give him. We weren't close, but we weren't enemies either. We just existed in the same house, orbiting different worlds. I had my routine. Classes in the morning, internship at Crawford Marketing 3 afternoons a week, study sessions at night. I was good at school, really good. Top 15% of my class, scholarship recipient, internship that could turn into a real job after graduation. I thought I was building something, a future, a career, a life that would finally make Dad see me as more than just the quiet daughter who never caused problems. And then Colton moved in. Everything I'd carefully constructed started cracking the day Dad brought home his partner's son and announced he'd be living with us. Temporarily, he said, just until things settled down with his mom's new job across the state. That was 8 months ago. Colton never left, and I'd been paying for his presence every single day since. The day Colton arrived, Dad transformed into someone I barely recognized. He smiled more, laughed louder, spent actual time at home instead of hiding in his office. All because of a 19-year-old boy with perfect hair and a talent for saying exactly what people wanted to hear. "Arden, this is Colton," Dad said, practically glowing with pride. "He's going to be staying with us for a while." Colton extended his hand, flashing a smile that looked rehearsed. "Nice to meet you. Your dad's told me so much about you." I shook his hand, trying to ignore the way Dad watched the interaction like it was some kind of test. "Welcome," I said, keeping my voice neutral. Over dinner that night, Dad hung on Colton's every word. Stories about his high school football team, his plans to study business, his opinions on everything from politics to the weather. Dad nodded along, asking questions, showing more interest than he'd ever shown in my entire college career. I pushed food around my plate and stayed quiet. When I mentioned my upcoming presentation at the internship, Dad gave me a distracted, "That's nice," before turning back to Colton's story about some party. Later that night, lying in bed, I heard them laughing downstairs. I told myself it was fine. Dad deserved to be happy. I was being selfish. But deep down, I knew. I'd seen the envy in my father's eyes when he looked at Colton, the son he'd always wanted. And Colton had noticed it too. The first sabotage happened 3 weeks after Colton moved in. I had a major presentation for my marketing class, worth 30% of my grade. I'd prepared for weeks, had my materials ready, set 3 alarms. The night before, I left my portfolio on the kitchen table. Every slide is printed, organized, and perfect. When I came downstairs at 6 in the morning, it was gone. I tore through the house, panic rising with each empty surface. Finally found it in the recycling bin outside, coffee stains soaking through every page. "Oh man, that was yours." Colton appeared in the doorway, coffee mug in hand. "I thought it was old stuff, my bad." Dad came up behind him. "It's just paper, Arden. You can reprint it." "The presentation is in 2 hours," I said, voice shaking. "The print shop doesn't open until 8. Dad shrugged, "Then explain to your professor what happened. These things occur." I stood there, portfolio dripping in my hands, watching them walk away together. Colton glanced back once, and I caught it, the smallest smirk, there and gone in a second. I missed the presentation, failed the assignment. The professor didn't accept my excuse. My grade dropped from an A to a B-. That night at dinner, Dad asked how my day went. I opened my mouth to tell him. Then I saw Colton watching me with those cold, amused eyes. "Fine," I said. "Everything's fine." I should have known it was only the beginning. Crawford Marketing became my sanctuary. The office was small but professional, tucked into a renovated building downtown. My supervisor, Janet, was everything my father wasn't: supportive, attentive, genuine. "You have real talent, Arden," she'd told me during my first week. "The way you analyze consumer behavior, your creative concepts, most interns don't think like this." I worked harder there than anywhere else. Took on extra projects, stayed late, volunteered for the difficult clients nobody else wanted. It wasn't just about building my resume. It was about proving to myself that I had value, even if Dad couldn't see it. My coworkers were kind. Marcus from graphic design always saved me a seat at lunch. Priya from accounts would quiz me before big presentations. Even Mr. Crawford, the owner, knew my name. "Keep this up," Janet said one afternoon, reviewing my latest campaign proposal. and we'll be talking about a full-time position after graduation." Those words carried me through that entire week. For the first time in months, I felt something other than invisible. I mattered here. My work mattered. The skills I'd spent years developing actually meant something. When I got home that evening and tried to share the news, Dad was helping Colton with some online application. He waved me off without looking up. "That's great, honey. Can you order dinner? We're busy here." I stood in the doorway for a moment, then walked to my room. At least someone saw my potential, even if it wasn't the person I'd spent my whole life trying to impress. The dinner happened on a Friday night. Dad insisted on cooking, which meant he was in a good mood, probably because Colton had been accepted into some business seminar he'd applied for. We sat around the table, Dad at the head, Colton to his right, me across from the golden boy. Dad raised his glass. "To Colton for his acceptance into the Young Entrepreneurs Program. Proud of you, son." Son, the word hit like a slap. Dad had never called my daughter with that much warmth. "Actually," I tried, "I got news today too. My supervisor said." "That's wonderful, Arden," Dad interrupted, not even looking at me. "Colton, tell us more about the program." Colton leaned back, that familiar smirk playing at his lips. "Well, it's pretty competitive, unlike some internships where they just let anyone in." The implication hung in the air. Dad chuckled. My fork clattered against the plate. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," Colton's smile widened. "Just saying real opportunities require real effort. Not everyone has what it takes." Dad laughed again, actually laughed, while my face burned. I wanted to scream that I'd earned my position, that I worked harder than Colton ever had, that nothing about me was handed or easy. Instead, I set down my napkin and excused myself. As I walked away, I caught Colton watching my reaction like it was the evening's entertainment. That night, lying in the dark, I felt something inside me crack. Not break, not yet, but fracture. A thin line spreading through what remained of my patience. The hallway incident happened on a Tuesday. I was running late between classes, books balanced in my arms, when Colton appeared around the corner. We were both enrolled at State, though we rarely crossed paths. Until that day. "Move," he said, not slowing down. "There's room for both of us," I replied, stepping slightly to the side. He didn't step. Instead, he shoulder-checked me hard enough that I slammed into the lockers. My books exploded across the floor, papers scattering. Pain shot through my shoulder and hip. "Watch where you're going," he said loudly, for the benefit of the students who'd stopped to stare. I looked up, vision blurring with tears of pain and humiliation. 3 people had seen everything, 3 witnesses. "He pushed her," someone whispered. But when campus security arrived, those same 3 students suddenly remembered it differently. "She walked into him. It was an accident. They both weren't paying attention." Colton stood there, expression perfectly innocent. I tried to avoid her. She must have tripped. Later, when Dad got the call, he didn't even ask for my side. He picked me up from the campus health center, drove home in silence, and finally spoke as we pulled into the driveway. "You will apologize to Colton for causing this scene. Not are you okay, not what happened, just blame, immediate and absolute." "He pushed me," I said quietly. "People saw." "Then why did they say otherwise?" Dad's voice was ice. "Stop making everything about you, Arden. Just apologize and move on." I got out of the car without responding. My shoulder throbbed. My heart ached worse. The suspension became official 3 days later. I sat in the administrator's office, listening to words that didn't feel real. Disruptive behavior, multiple complaints, pending disciplinary review. "Mr. Pierce has provided statements from several students about ongoing harassment," the administrator said, sliding papers across her desk. "This suspension is effective immediately." Mr. Pierce, Colton's last name. I'd heard it so often from Dad's lips I'd almost forgotten it wasn't actually mine. "He's lying," I managed. "All of this is lies." "The evidence says otherwise." She tapped the papers. 2 weeks suspension. You may return once you've provided a formal written apology and completed a conflict resolution session. My hands shook as I signed the acknowledgement form. Each letter felt like signing away pieces of my future. My scholarship had strict attendance requirements. My internship expected reliability. This suspension was a bomb exploding in slow motion. "I didn't do anything wrong," I whispered. The administrator's expression softened slightly. "Sometimes, Arden, it's better to apologize and move forward than to fight battles we can't win." I walked out of that office with the suspension letter clutched in trembling fingers. The hallway stretched endlessly before me. Other students passed by, their normal lives continuing while mine crumbled. That evening, Dad called me into his office to deliver his verdict, and Colton stood behind him, smirking. That's when I knew they'd won, unless I did something they'd never expect. That night I cried, really cried, for the first time since Colton moved in. Quiet, desperate sobs that shook my whole body. I buried my face in my pillow so nobody would hear. Everything I'd worked for was slipping away. The scholarship, the internship, graduation, my entire future, all of it balanced on one impossible choice. Apologize for something I didn't do or lose everything. I grabbed my notebook, the one I used for planning projects, and started writing. Not plans, just words. "I don't forgive you," over and over, filling page after page until my hand cramped. "I don't forgive you for choosing him. I don't forgive you for not believing me. I don't forgive you for making me invisible." Somewhere around 3 a.m, the tears stopped. The hurt didn't disappear, but it transformed into something else, something colder and clearer. I'd spent 20 years trying to earn my father's love. Years of perfect grades, good behavior, never asking for too much. And it didn't matter. One charming stranger had erased 2 decades in 8 months. I couldn't change Dad. I couldn't make Colton disappear. But I could stop trying to fix something that was never really whole. I could stop fighting their fight and start planning my own moves. For the first time since the suspension, I felt something other than despair. It wasn't hope exactly. It was sharper than that, more dangerous. It was clear, and clarity, I was learning, could cut deeper than any blade. The next morning, I woke up differently. Not healed, I'd never be that naive again, but focused. I'd spent months reacting to Colton's games, trying to defend myself against accusations that kept multiplying. Now I realized the fundamental problem. They wanted me to be emotional, desperate, weak. So I'd become the opposite. I started watching instead of engaging, observing instead of arguing. Every interaction became data. Colton craved praise, couldn't go 6 hours without fishing for compliments. Dad needed to feel important. His ego was fragile despite the corporate swagger. And both of them were predictable. Colton's pattern was simple: cause damage, play innocent, collect sympathy. He'd done it with my presentation, the hallway incident, probably a dozen smaller things I dismissed as accidents. Dad's pattern was even clearer. Believe Colton unconditionally, dismiss me automatically, avoid any conflict that might disrupt his fantasy of the perfect blended family. Neither of them expected me to stop fighting. They'd built their whole strategy around my emotional reactions, my desperate attempts to prove my innocence. What if I just stopped? What if I became quiet, observant, strategic? I pulled out my laptop and created a document. Not for revenge, not yet, just observations, dates, times, incidents, a timeline of Colton's behavior, evidence of Dad's bias. I didn't know what I'd do with it, but I knew one thing: they weren't invincible. They were predictable, and predictable meant vulnerable. The game had changed. They just didn't know it yet. Janet noticed immediately when I showed up at Crawford Marketing the next day. "Arden, I thought you were suspended from classes." "I am," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But the suspension is from school, not here. I was hoping I could take on more hours while I'm out." Her expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Is everything okay?" For a moment, I considered telling her everything. But what would that accomplish? Adults always sided with other adults, and Dad could spin any story to make me look like the problem child. Just some conflict at school, I said carefully. It'll be resolved soon, but in the meantime, I'd love to work more if you have projects. Janet studied me for a long moment. Then she nodded. Actually, we just landed a new client. Small retail chain looking to rebrand. It's a big project, and I could use someone detail-oriented to help with research and preliminary concepts. I'll do it, I said immediately. She smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Come on, let me show you the brief. For the next 2 hours, I lost myself at work. Market analysis, consumer demographics, competitor research. Real problems with real solutions. No lies, no manipulation, no impossible standards. When Janet reviewed my initial notes, she looked impressed. This is excellent work, Arden. Really excellent. Those words meant more than she could know. At least here, someone saw my value. At least here, my effort mattered. I threw myself into the project with everything I had. It became my lifeline, proof that I was more than the family disappointment Dad believed I was. I didn't mean to overhear the argument. I'd come home late from the internship, let myself in quietly, and heard raised voices from Dad's office. I can't keep covering these expenses. That was Dad, frustrated and sharp. It's just temporary. The other voice belonged to Colton's mom, Diane. I'd only met her twice. Once I'm settled in the new position. You said that 3 months ago. I've paid for his car insurance, his phone, his credit cards. Diane, I'm not made of money. He's your partner's son. I thought you cared about him. I do care. That's why I've been supporting him. But there has to be a limit. Silence. Then Diane's voice, colder now. If this is too much trouble, maybe Colton should leave. No, Dad's response was immediate. No, that's not what I'm saying. We'll figure it out. I backed away from the door quietly, mind racing. Colton was draining Dad financially, and Dad was letting it happen, too proud or too stubborn to admit he'd made a mistake. I filed this information away carefully. Dad's pride, Colton's expenses, the growing resentment buried under forced smiles. Love blinds, I thought, climbing the stairs to my room. But debt suffocates. Eventually, the weight becomes impossible to ignore. Eventually, everyone sees what they've been trying desperately not to see. I just had to wait, and watch, and be ready when the cracks finally split wide open. The coffee shop incident happened by accident. I'd stopped at Brewer's on Main for my usual afternoon study session when I spotted Colton through the window. He was with 2 guys from his business program, laughing loudly at a corner table. I almost left, but then I saw him interact with the barista, a thin kid with nervous hands, probably 17. This is wrong, Colton said, shoving the cup across the counter. I ordered oat milk. This is regular. I'm sorry, sir, I can remake. Do you know how to read? Are you illiterate? Colton's voice carried across the entire shop. This is the 2nd time you've messed up my order. The kid's face turned red. Other customers stared. Colton's friends laughed. I'll fix it right now, the barista stammered. Just forget it. Colton grabbed the cup and deliberately poured it into the trash. Some people are too stupid for basic jobs. The barista looked like he might cry. Colton walked out with his friends, still laughing. I sat in the corner, unseen, taking it all in. No recording, that would be too obvious. Just observation, mental notes. His mask had holes. In public, away from Dad's protective shadow, Colton revealed himself. Mean, cruel, entitled. The barista was cleaning up when I approached the counter. I saw what happened, I said quietly. That wasn't okay. He shrugged, trying to hide his hurt. Used to it. Rich kids come in here all the time. I ordered my drink and left a $20 tip. It wouldn't fix what happened, but maybe it would help him remember that not everyone was like Colton. Patterns, I thought, walking home. Everyone has patterns. Colton's just became a little clearer. The breakthrough at work came 2 weeks into the project. I developed an entire campaign concept. Branding, messaging, social media strategy. Janet called me into her office with Mr. Crawford present. Arden, this is remarkable, she said, spreading my mock-ups across the desk. The client loved your initial concepts. They want you to present the final pitch next month. My heart stuttered. Present, but I'm just an intern. Mr. Crawford smiled. You're the one who developed this campaign. You should be the one to present it. Besides, Janet added, you're better at this than half my full-time staff. I meant what I said before, keep this up, and we'll be discussing permanent employment after graduation. I walked out of that office feeling 10 feet tall. For the first time in months, I'd achieved something meaningful. Something mine that nobody could take away or twist into failure. That evening, I came home practically glowing. Found Dad in the kitchen with Colton, looking over some paperwork. I have amazing news, I started. The client loved my campaign and… That's great, Arden, Dad interrupted without looking up. Can you grab dinner? We're trying to figure out Colton's seminar schedule. The glow dimmed. Not extinguished, I wouldn't let them take this from me, but definitely diminished. Sure, I said quietly, whatever you need. I ordered pizza, ate in my room, and reminded myself that Dad's inability to celebrate me wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of his choices. At least someone saw my potential. That had to be enough. I stopped seeking Dad's attention, stopped trying to share achievements or start conversations. When he asked questions, I answered briefly. When he ignored me, I didn't react. The change confused him. I could see it in the way his eyes followed me sometimes, like he was trying to understand what shifted. You've been quiet lately, he said one morning. Just busy, I replied, pouring coffee. With what? Work, projects, life. He frowned. You're not still upset about the suspension, are you? That's done with, move forward. Move forward. As if it was that simple. As if apologizing for something I didn't do wouldn't fundamentally change who I was. I'm not upset, I said honestly, and I wasn't, not anymore. Anger required emotional investment. I'd withdrawn mine. Colton noticed too. At dinner, he'd make little comments trying to provoke reactions. Snide remarks about my clothes, my major, my easy internship. I just smiled politely and passed the salt. This bothered him more than my old reactions ever had. He thrived on getting rises out of people, on watching them squirm. My indifference unsettled him. What's wrong with you? He finally asked one night. Nothing, I said calmly. Why? You're acting weird. I took a sip of water. I'm just focused on my own life now, moving forward. Dad nodded approvingly. Colton looked frustrated. Good, let them wonder. Let them worry. Silent withdrawal was more powerful than any argument. The discovery happened by accident. I came home early one afternoon and found mail scattered on the kitchen counter. Dad was usually meticulous about putting things away, but today's stack included several bank notices. I shouldn't have looked, but Colton's name caught my eye on one envelope, already opened. Loan payment overdue, second notice. I glanced toward Dad's office, door closed, voices murmuring inside. Quickly, I pulled out my phone and photographed the notice. Then the next one, and the next. Car loan, Dad is cosigner. Credit card, Dad is authorized account manager. Private student loan, Dad is guarantor. Thousands of dollars, tens of thousands, all attached to my father's name and credit, all for Colton's lifestyle, the car, the clothes, the seminar fees. I put everything back exactly as I found it and went to my room, sat on my bed, staring at the photos on my phone. Dad had co-signed everything, made himself legally responsible for debts Colton was clearly not paying, and from the notices, this had been going on for months. A cold smile spread across my face. There it was, not my doing, not my revenge, just the natural consequence of loving someone irresponsibly, of trusting blindly, of choosing pride over reality. Their downfall, written in fine print and red ink. All I had to do was wait for the inevitable. The first real crack appeared 3 weeks later. Dad's supervisor called him at home, rare enough that I noticed. The conversation was tense. Dad's voice strained even through his closed office door. When he emerged, his face was gray. "Everything okay?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Work issue," he muttered. "Nothing important." But it was important. I learned the details later from a casual conversation with Marcus at the office, whose sister worked in Dad's department. "Some kid named Colton caused a huge scene," Marcus said. "Showed up at their office, argued with security, made threats. Your dad's boss is questioning whether he can maintain professional judgment if his home life is that chaotic." My stomach tightened. Threats. Something about money owed. I don't know all the details, but it reflected badly on your dad. I said nothing, just absorbed this information, added it to my mental timeline. Colton's behavior wasn't just affecting our house anymore. It was bleeding into Dad's professional life, his reputation, his security. And still, Dad defended him, still chose him, still paid the bills and smoothed over the damages. But the cracks were spreading. I could see them now, spiderwebbing through the foundation of their relationship. I didn't need to do anything. Gravity was working just fine on its own. Eventually, things fall when they're no longer supported. I just had to make sure I wasn't standing underneath when the collapse came. The breakup happened on a Saturday. I was at the library when Dad called, voice tight with barely controlled emotion. "Come home now." I found him alone in the living room, tie loosened, drink in hand, unusual for mid-afternoon. Diane's photos were gone from the mantel. "What happened?" I asked. "Diane left, said I care more about appearances than honesty, that I enabled Colton's behavior instead of parenting him." He laughed bitterly. "After everything I've done for that boy." I sat down carefully. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" He looked at me sharply. "You never liked him." I didn't say that. "You didn't have to, but I thought I was doing the right thing, making him feel welcome, supporting him." He took a long drink. "She found the loan statements, all the missed payments, confronted me about co-signing without consulting her." Silence stretched between us. I wanted to feel vindicated, but mostly I just felt tired. "Dad, maybe this is an opportunity to." "To what? Abandon him when he needs support?" He shook his head. "I'm not doing that. Diane can leave. Colton stays." Even now, even with evidence of financial disaster, professional consequences, relationship destruction, still he chose Colton. I stood up slowly. "I need to study." "Arden," his voice stopped me. "I know things have been difficult, but family means supporting each other through hard times." I turned back. "You're right, the family should do that." The words I didn't say hung in the air. "You never supported me. You chose him over me every single time. But what's the point of stating the obvious?" I left him sitting there alone with his choices. The school board investigation started with a phone call. Dad listened in silence, face growing darker with each passing second. "I understand. Yes, I'll discuss it with him, thank you." He hung up and immediately called Colton downstairs. I hovered in the hallway. Unnoticed. "The school board received complaints," Dad said, voice strained. "Multiple students reporting bullying incidents. Your name came up repeatedly. They're reopening several cases, including Arden's suspension." Colton's face paled. "That's ridiculous. People are jealous." "Stop," Dad held up a hand. "Just stop. I need you to tell me the truth, all of it." "I am telling the truth. This is exactly like with Arden, everyone ganging up on me." But Dad's expression had shifted. For the first time, doubt crept into his eyes. 5 different students, Colton. 5 separate complaints. The barista from that coffee shop filed a formal harassment report. My heart jumped. The nervous kid had spoken up after all. Colton started backpedaling, making excuses, but Dad wasn't listening anymore. He looked exhausted, like someone who'd been carrying a heavy weight and finally realized he could set it down. Later that night, Dad knocked on my door. "The board wants to review your suspension. They'll likely overturn it." I looked up from my laptop. "Okay." "That's it, just okay." What do you want me to say, Dad? That I was right all along, that you should have believed me. I kept my voice level. None of that changes what happened. It just is what it is. He flinched. I'm trying to apologize, Arden. You always told me to reflect. I hope you're doing that now. Janet called me into her office 3 days later wearing a huge smile. We have a proposal for you, she said. Mr. Crawford and I have been discussing your situation. We'd like to offer you our education sponsorship, full tuition coverage for your remaining semesters, with guaranteed full-time employment upon graduation. I stared at her, not quite believing. What? Your work has been exceptional. We invest in talent like yours. Consider it a scholarship through the company. She slid paperwork across the desk. No strings attached except maintaining your current performance level, which I have zero doubts about. My hands trembled as I picked up the contract. Full tuition, guaranteed job, my future secured without Dad, without fighting, without compromising who I was. I don't know what to say, I whispered. Say yes, you've earned this, Arden. Your work speaks for itself. I signed with steady hands this time. No shaking, no fear, just certainty that I was choosing the right path. When I got home, I started packing. Not everything, just the essentials. My plan was forming naturally, pieces falling into place. Dad appeared in my doorway. What are you doing? Planning my next steps. I folded a sweater carefully. My suspension was overturned. I'll be returning to classes next week. Crawford Marketing offered me a sponsorship, so I won't need your financial support anymore. Arden, we should talk about how you chose someone else's son over your own daughter. About how you suspended my education to protect someone who lied repeatedly. I looked up. Dad, you suspended your relationship with me long before you suspended my schooling. His face crumpled. I made mistakes, I see that now. I'm glad you saw it, really, but recognition doesn't erase damage. The moment Dad truly broke happened 2 weeks later. He showed up at Crawford Marketing, unannounced, desperate. Janet came to get me. Someone's here to see you. Dad stood in the lobby, looking smaller somehow, older. Can we talk, please? We stepped outside into weak afternoon sunlight. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Colton was expelled, permanent dismissal. The evidence against him was overwhelming. His voice cracked. My supervisor put me on probation for the office incident. Diane wants him out of the house, but legally I'm responsible for his debts now. I'm sorry you're going through this, I said honestly. I need you to help me control the narrative. Talk to the school board, tell them it wasn't all his fault, that circumstances. Stop, the word came out harder than I intended. You want me to lie to protect him, again. I'm asking you to help your family. My family? I almost laughed. Dad, you made it very clear who you consider family. Every choice you made for 8 months proved it. You can't build a relationship on betrayal and then demand loyalty when convenient. Everything I did, I thought. You thought you could replace me, I get it. Colton was easier to love, charming, grateful, everything you wished I was. But Dad, I was always here, working hard, trying to make you proud. You just never looked. Tears streamed down his face. I'm so sorry, Arden. I believe you are, but an apology doesn't equal absolution. I took a breath. I'm moving out. I have my own place lined up. You'll have to handle this without me. He reached for my arm. I stepped back gently. Goodbye, Dad. I walked back inside without looking back. Through the window, I watched him stand there for a long time before finally walking away. Colton's expulsion made local news, not because of him specifically, but because the investigation uncovered a larger bullying problem the administration had ignored. 3 other students were removed. Policies changed. Dad lost his supervisory position, but kept his job. The demotion came with a pay cut significant enough that he had to sell the house and move to a smaller place outside town. I heard all this through Marcus, whose sister still worked there. I didn't reach out, didn't offer to help, didn't feel obligated to fix problems I hadn't created. My new apartment was small but mine. 1 bedroom, affordable on my internship salary, close to campus and work. I bought secondhand furniture, hung cheap prints on the walls, and felt more at home than I ever had in Dad's house. Finals came and went. I aced everything, GPA restored, scholarship reinstated even though I didn't need it anymore. The day my permanent rejection of Dad's influence became official was the day I changed my emergency contact forms. Where his name had been, I wrote Janet's. Family isn't just blood. Sometimes it's the people who choose to see your worth when the people who should love you refuse to look. I didn't celebrate Colton's downfall. I didn't gloat about Dad's consequences. I simply moved forward, building a life where my value wasn't negotiable and my truth wasn't optional. Apology denied, not from cruelty but from self-preservation. Some things once broken don't deserve to be fixed. Graduation came 6 months later. I walked across that stage in Crawford Marketing's company colors. They'd sponsored caps and gowns for their scholarship recipients. Janet, Marcus, Priya, and Mr. Crawford sat in the audience. They cheered louder than anyone else in the auditorium when my name was called. Dad sent a card. "Congratulations, proud of you, love, Dad." I filed it away without responding. Maybe someday those words would mean something. Today wasn't that day. My permanent position at Crawford started the following Monday. Marketing coordinator with my own office, my own accounts, real responsibility. The campaign I'd developed as an intern had won the client over so completely, they'd requested me specifically for all future projects. I bought actual furniture for the apartment, adopted a cat from the shelter, Gray Tabby, who followed me room to room like we'd known each other forever. Slowly, the weight I'd carried for 20 years lifted. Not all at once. Healing isn't linear. But gradually, I learned what it felt like to live without constantly trying to prove I deserved to exist. My life became mine. My choices became mine. My future became mine. I never went back to Dad's new house. Never responded to his occasional texts. Not from cruelty, but from understanding. Some people teach you your worth by showing you exactly how little they were willing to pay for it. Dad's lesson was expensive, but I'd learned it completely. 2 years later, Crawford Marketing promoted me to senior coordinator. The ceremony was small, just department heads and the executive team. Janet gave a short speech. Arden Hale joined us as an intern who turned adversity into fuel. She rose despite every obstacle thrown at her, proving that talent and determination matter more than circumstances. We're lucky to have her. Everyone clapped. I smiled, soft but sure. Not the desperate smile of someone seeking approval, the genuine smile of someone who'd found their place. That evening, sitting in my apartment with the gray cat purring on my lap, I thought about the girl who'd walked out of her father's office with a suspension letter and a broken heart. She'd been so desperate to be seen, to be valued, to matter. Now I understood I'd always mattered. I'd always had worth. The problem was never me. Some people can't see value unless it serves them. And when you stop performing for an audience that will never appreciate you, you finally get to live for yourself. I didn't destroy them. I didn't need to. Their choices destroyed themselves. I just stopped volunteering to be collateral damage. Dad and Colton faced the natural consequences of their actions. I faced forward and built something better. That's not revenge. That's justice. The quiet, inevitable kind that comes when you finally stop accepting less than you deserve. What would you do in this situation? Would you have apologized just to keep the peace, or stood your ground like I did? If this story hit home for you, hit that like button and drop a comment with your thoughts. Have you ever been in a position where your family chose someone else over you? Share your city and state. Let's build a community of people who understand. And if you want more stories about standing up, moving forward, and choosing yourself, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Thanks for being here. You're not alone in this.